Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back, you soil nerds, bioactive freaks, and everything in between. We're happy to have you back here at Bioactive Live Q&A for another week. Hopefully some great questions. I think we're going to do another giveaway here for the best question. I'm not sure if Kev's going to send seeds, or I'm happy to chip in as well. But best question this week is going to be getting a sweet little pack. And I don't know if you saw last week, but it's not just seeds. It's sticks, slaps, and all sorts of good shit. So best question tonight gets the prize. And welcome back, everybody. We got Kevin here from OK Calyx, Bryan from Rubber Ducky Isopods, and myself, Mark, from MI Beneficials. We're here today to talk about resources outside of kind of just what you're watching here. And, whether that be books, whether that be, resources online, there's plenty of that, and people to follow. So yeah, we're going to get into some good stuff this week. And coming up and we'll go over this at the end of the show as well. But coming up, we have some really cool stuff coming down the pipe. We're trying to find someone for next week, but the week after that, we have Organic Alexa coming on to throw her microscope on some soil to look at microbiology, microbial life. The following week, we have Andrew coming back from Benamite, put his microscope on some predatory mites, some Californicus, Phallicis, and the Occidentalis mites that he carries, and also to look at some spider mites under the scope. And then the following week after that, which is possibly that week or the week after, we have Mr. Chris Trump coming on to bestow some knowledge and let us hit him with some hard-hitting questions to hopefully get to know him better and to extract some knowledge, because that's what we're all looking for. So sorry for the long-winded intro today, but with no further ado, let's get into some books that you guys have been reading. Kevin, I know that you have some burning books that you've really been, not burning books, you've got some crazy new ideas coming out of these amazing books. And I'm excited to hear about it. So let's dive right in.
All right, Happy Dirt Dude, did you get the Sakuteiki book? I think it was you on Instagram. Some people, y'all have different names as you go to different apps. But if you did, let me know, because I know one of y'all got this book. Anyway, introduction to this book, Sakuteiki. Am I saying it right? I don't know. It's a Japanese word. But this is the name of the oldest book on gardening in the world. It's a Japanese essay on book, Visions of Japanese Gardening. You see the subtitle there. What this book does is it gets into old style gardening. And when I say old style, I mean thousands of years ago in ancient lands, nothing like we understand whatsoever. So this book is about Japanese gardens and how the garden would be set up and why it would be set up a certain way. What were the benefits and the taboos of setting up a certain garden? There's lots and lots of different gardens that are discussed in here. There's a waterfall garden, there's a pond garden, a mountain garden, and the list goes on. And if you hear those titles or those names of those gardens, it's all nature, right? The mountain garden, the waterfall garden. Nature is such a big deal in these gardens, so much so that nature really becomes divinities in the garden if they are set up correctly. And what that means is if you take nature, a tree, rocks, sand, water, roots or stepping stones that you can kind of walk on, anything in nature has a power to it. And what the idea was back in these early times in Japan, they wanted to start doing gardens or making gardens that resembled nature, that had actually the essence of nature in it. So they would literally build streams through their garden. And later on in this gardening, world of gardening in Japan, new rules come in and things kind of change. Nonetheless, they would have rivers and trees and stones that should be placed properly. Let me go off on this for a second. These stones, whenever you would put a stone in a garden, and when we say garden, don't think food garden. Just think a place of beauty, maybe is better, because there's really no fruits or foods in most of these gardens. But when you would get rocks, let's say that a rock was way on top of a mountain and it was a vertical rock, it was kind of straight up and down. If you were to take that rock and put it in your garden, it had to remain the way you pulled it off of that mountain. It had to be straight up and down. There would be no reason to put a rock on its side that was naturally straight up and down. That would be a taboo. They would start to have rules, like I said. And if you started growing trees the wrong way, if your river ran from north to south, it might be incorrect. You should have done it the other way. But Japan, the country, or the kingdoms in what we now call Japan, they had government agencies set up to actually direct the gardening of aristocrats, of common people, and your gardens had to look a proper way based on certain writings that were often religious and kind of maybe moral for certain reasons. You set your garden up in certain ways because the country needs to be successful with your deities. Like, don't mess up the gardening because you'll mess up our culture and our entire lifestyle. So
Kind of
that
like
was
a
go
kind
ahead.
of like an HOA, but it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the gardening had dumb rules for sure, but it definitely was better than HOAs here in America. Now, these government officials, they would come by and they'd actually check things out, and they would look to see if you have done it right. I want to look. I want to read one thing from this book, and it remind the reason, guys, the reason I'm reading all of this stuff is because I'm trying to teach a deeper meaning of natural farming, and I'm trying to help people understand the evolution of these inputs and farming and gardening for centuries back, and the rules that they would follow and the reasons they would follow those rules, and their historical and geographical setting comes into play. And I want people to eventually understand ultimately that you have freedom to make your own inputs in your own way. That's ultimately what I'm trying to show. But we have to start with how structured these ideas are and why they're so structured and how they're rooted in religiosity. They're rooted in emperor worship, things like that. Like, the reason we do gardens sometimes today is because of these ideas way back then. So I'm trying to help people have a better understanding of K&F inputs, Jadam, natural farming, and how to really be able to do it and how to be successful and have fun and not worry about so many rules. But anyway, there's one passage in here where he talks about how people will come to your garden. This guys, this was the perfect analogy for this idea that I'm trying to do of teaching people to have freedom with making inputs. Okay, so check this out. He's talking about a garden, and he's talking about people going to another person's garden and looking at it, right? And then they got something to say all of a sudden, and he kind of talks about this. I'll read this here in a minute, but I'll set it up with you understanding that we all have had that person come onto our Instagram page and say, "That's not how you do it, right? That's not right. No, you don't do it. You'll get a fungus. You'll get that dude that comes on your Instagram page and wants to tell you how to operate in your environment, one environment he's probably never ever been in his entire life."
Well, you
And
know what that does, Kevin? What it does, it takes away from the essence of what we're trying to do here, which is to peel back the curtain and share. And so when you get that sort of feedback, it starts to make you second guess it makes you
totally,
like it's inherent that you're going to start to question what you're doing, feel less pride in what you're doing, be less apt to share what you're doing. And that's the kind of mentality that we're really trying to keep out of here because it's not really an adversarial show that we're running here. And it's not because we don't all have our viewpoints, but it's because we're all kind of taking nature as the steering point. And we all are growing in different microclimates. This country is extremely diverse, more diverse than Korea, north and south, east and west. the hemisphere, I mean, not the hemispheres, but the different regions and climates of this country are so diverse that you can't possibly bottle yourself up. So, anyways, sorry. I just, that, that type of feedback is, it should be taken with a grain of salt because, just because one person says that's not the way to do it does not mean that you're not A, doing something that's meaningful, or B, doing the right thing. So just do your thing, man. But anyways, go back to Kevin. Sorry.
Very good. So here's what he says about aristocrats coming into other people's gardens and having something to say. I'll get to the point. He says this: it's amusing to see ignorant people attempt to criticize a garden according to a certain style they know nothing of. I was like, bam! It was happening back then, man. People coming over to other people's gardens, looking at it and criticizing it. And it's not their garden. They ain't been there. They do no work. They don't know. They don't know what's underneath the grass. They just see the grass or this plant. They don't know the soil. They don't know anything about it, but they want to come and critique it. And he calls them ignorant people, you know. And it's just that's it. Not ignorant as in I hate you ignorant. It's in, dude, you're ignorant of my situation and my environment. You know zero facts about my environment, you know. So don't criticize other people's stuff. As I always say, I put my stuff on Instagram so you can see what I do. I'm not asking for opinions. I don't need them. I'll listen if it's good, but I don't need your opinions. I'm just showing you what I do. I've done it long enough. I'm just showing you what I do. And if you're watching somebody else's Instagram, that's probably how they feel too. Now, one cool thing about this book, I'll move on. The Japanese word for gardening, I can't pronounce it, but it literally means moving stones. The word gardening was so intertwined with nature and the moving and positioning of organic rocks and or trees or whatever, that the word the word gardening simply meant to be moving stones. That's a whole new idea, guys. It's a totally different idea from what my idea of gardening means. When I say what is gardening, well, I'd be like gardening, food, dirt, soil. I wouldn't even mention rocks. So see, it's a whole new perspective on gardening that I'm trying to look at. All right.
Well, and it's like it's kind of as simple as it gets. It's like if all it is moving rocks, then we're really seriously taking nature as our lead here.
That's
That's
okay.
what that means to me.
Mark, you freaking nailed it, dude. Let me tell you what it says. So he's the author of the book, the writer of this book, Sakuteiki. He says, when building a garden, follow the requests of the stones. And what he means there, what the translator is saying he means is, he means just look at what nature's doing and try to imitate it. It'll be prettier, it'll work better, and it'll be easier if you just will look at the stones and do what the stones are telling you, man. And it's just a really, isn't that a cool perspective? I just think it's really neat.
Well, it's a certainly different way of looking at the minute, like the filler. Your cover crop would be a good, like something that comes to mind for me that I've in the past year, 2 years, kind of learned to just accept its wildness, right? And like we've talked about before, like birds come in and will like crap out just random seeds. Like all of a sudden, I have amaranth and mugwort and like stuff that I didn't plant. I mean, I purposely planted comfrey and I purposely planted borage and yarrow and like some other things. But what really proliferates is the stuff like the mugwort, like the stinging nettles, the stuff that's the amaranth, the stuff that's coming in the bird poop that's meant to grow here naturally. That when you really start digging into it, it's not taking anything away from your plant to do a co-cropping of that. So like when you forget about the fact that it's not leaching any nutrients away from your plant whatsoever by having the intermingling roots, you start to kind of just let it go and you start to use it to your advantage. Now all of a sudden you're letting nature steer your path. So like that's like one example where I've like started to kind of just trust nature, trust the natural thing. I'm not like not going out of my way now to plant cover crop anymore. I'm just what's reseeding is reseeding. A lot of it is reseeding. And I just mulch it down because that's the way I can steer it, is I can cut it down, keep it away from the money crops, keep it away from my cannabis and stuff like that. So it's not possibly bringing, pests and pathogens and stuff like that in. And just to not hinder sunlight, most importantly at this point. So yeah, letting nature be your guide. I feel like that's an underlying tone with everything we do here. It's like our church.
Totally.
That's like our God, nature, baby.
Totally. Yeah, that's right. Bryan, you want me to do another book and then you do one?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, next book, everybody. Farmers of 40 Centuries, Organic Farming in China, Korea, and Japan. Now, if you start to notice, we're always saying these three groups right here: China, Korea, and Japan. Notice Korea, natural farming. Korea, the inventors of KNF and Jadam went to Japan to learn Japanese methods to grow, and the Japanese folks, from this book right here, I could have gone into a whole lot of how the Japanese took a ton of Chinese and Northern India cultures into their gardening and into their words, that they would use and stuff like that. So China, Korea, and Japan, you type in on the internet, natural farming China, you're going to get a world of fun stuff to look at. I typed in Japan, and that's kind of how I got going on it. But anyway, 40 farmers of 40 centuries. What this book does, it is very, very detailed. This guy was like an accountant. He has the amounts of manure farmers would use, and he would calculate out how much nitrogen would be in that manure, and therefore they're putting on this many pounds or tonnage of nitrogen onto a 4-acre field. You can get lost in the minutia of all the details and stuff like that, but just skip through as much as you can. And my favorite chapter in here is called, let's see, well, shoot, I can't find the chapter 9. Got my glasses on. It's all about waste. It's about how they reused waste. Now, I think I've told this story before, but in this book, it talks about how all year long, the people of a village would keep everything that was to be able to be used as fuel, food, or for soil. And so urine and poop, they would keep it. They didn't throw it away. They kept it in big barrels or holes in the ground. They would keep their urine. They would keep their food waste. Any plants that they grew, if they could eat it, they would. If they couldn't, they would let it dry and use it for fuel. If they didn't need it for fuel, they would put it to the side and compost. But all year long, these people are composting. They're saving all their waste, and it's at 1 week of the year, they put it all out onto the street, and farmers constantly all week long come into town, get all the waste, take it back out to the fields. And it's not like they just put it on the fields at that time. They are actually letting it ferment for a good season or two before they actually use it on the fields. So they've been doing this, years and years, and they're just in a cycle right now. And so they would take all of that waste material. They would take it beside a river, dig a huge pit. They would put all the green manure down. Then they would go to the river and dig up silt and that topsoil, and they would just throw the river mud onto it. And then they would put another layer of compost.
And it didn't even stink. It probably did. That's how they made it not stink. It's like nature's magic.
They
Little
talk about
soil.
that, how to keep the smells down. And he talks about how, guys, this was written back like 1915, 1920, somewhere around there. And he talks about American farmers do not understand. He talks about how chemicals are taking over farming, and how China and Japan and Korea are able to actually maximize economically in their country because they're reusing so much waste that as a country, they're not buying nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus. They have it from their waste. They're collecting it, reusing it, fermenting it down. It has what they need. And so they're able to spend their money on other things, right? It's just more healthy for the country as a whole. But that was the mentality back then. Like, as a people, we do this. And if you don't want to participate, you don't eat. That's it. Like everybody plays a part in the food processing in this book. In any country or any small town or village, everyone plays a part. It's your food. You're going to eat it. Those farmers are going to grow it for you, but you must participate in it. You don't just get to go to the grocery store and be completely unplugged from all the work and toil and knowledge and everything it took to grow your food. They were in it to win it, right? They had to participate to eat. And so it was such a fun, if this is a really fun book, like I said, it goes deep into details, but what you see people used to do, you're like, that's it. This is so cool. I mean, there really is an organic revolution, small r, of coming back into this knowledge again, because we have been chemicaled out. America's been chemicaled out. They have put it in everything that we touch, taste, smell, walk on, to anything. And it's just like, freaking leave us alone. We don't need that. Our soil doesn't need any of your chemicals at all. It just needs organic matter. And having said that, that is one of the main points in this book. He constantly discusses how important it is to have organic matter in there. And he says this right here. I'll read it. It says, this is a remarkable practice in that a very old application of organic manure or organic matter is the most powerful ingredient. So he's just saying an application of green manure, organic materials, all it is. Application of that is the best thing. Better than any manures or anything, just organic matter back down onto the ground. So that's a repetitive theme in that book.
So, Kev, a question for you. Why is it that when you do like some like very surface value research on composting on, like, let's say Google, right? I remember years ago learning that any animal that eats protein, like humans, any omnivore, anything that's a carnivore, that fecal matter's no good. And further than that, like food scraps, like meats, you know, uh, mainly just meats, like just and other food scraps that you wouldn't like classify as like a vegetable fruit. Why is it that all of these things are kind of like thrown at you as not safe to compost? Is it because they're not really like, they're not something you want to put in your worm bin indoors, or like why would that be?
So if you ask me, you can throw all the meat in there you want. I eat meat, but I don't have a bunch of meat to throw in there. But our meat scraps always get thrown into my compost. The black soldier flies are going to chow down. It will turn back into soil, just like the meat on your bodies will turn back to soil, right? We're all going back to soil. Everything goes back to soil. So the one thing I've heard that might be the most convincing argument is the microbiome is different with meat than vegetables. So you're going to have different biology and different things that we really don't use in gardening so much, like because it's on the meat side. So it attracts a new microbiome or a new microbiology as opposed to the plants. That's the best I've ever heard. I compost meat.
But at the end of the day, it all like, if it's a time thing, maybe that's what it is like meat takes a lot longer to break down. It also stinks a lot more if you don't have it
It
covered
does.
up.
Yeah.
If you don't have it covered up or out somewhere in the back nine of your yard, it stinks to high heaven. It also brings in rodents if you're not properly containing your compost, like Kevin does his in basically big 50-gallon drums, which that's a great way to keep the pests, like the rodents, out. Caging it in is another way you can try to keep them out, but yeah, just maybe that's what it is. I don't know. It's just funny because it seems like those things, when you're like the first pages that come up on Google, if you search like composting at home, they'll tell you what not to compost, and that those things are on that list. So, but you also are a huge, like you're in Oklahoma, so you got black soldier flies outdoors that are gonna make quick work of a T-bone steak, bone
Yeah.
and all. They don't give a shit. Whereas up here, up north, that stuff does take a lot longer because we don't have that crazy swarm of flying composters. So I forgot the point of that, but yeah.
Bryan, go ahead, bud.
All right. Before I got started with the book, I just want to point out real quick that we do have the receipts around here. So this is when you go to Chris Trump's thing, and the reason I'm bringing this up is you can watch as many YouTubes as stuff as you want, read as many books. You're going to be at a certain level, but at some point, in my opinion, you're going to have to go and touch this stuff, smell this stuff. Same stuff with what Kevin has coming up in October. So when you guys are listening to us on Friday night, this is where you start to build up that book, if you will, of questions, so that when you do have enough of a solid knowledge on something and you have the bankroll to go and pay a decent amount of money to go and kind of learn this stuff hands-on, during that class with Chris Trump, he teaches you to smell what actually is correct, and he also teaches you to smell what is incorrect. And that, especially the incorrect, I don't think that ever leaves you. And there's something special to that. So I just wanted to point out, like, books are fantastic. The YouTube's fantastic. But to be able to make this stuff on your own, if you are able to go to Kevin's class in October or other people that are on his same level, I highly, I wanted to show that because I personally invested in that myself. Even though I would say this stuff, you go to the next level when you actually are working with somebody at the level that these guys are at. And so I just wanted to kind of like bring the receipt, if you will, so that you guys can see that I also invested in this education a long time ago. I mean, that was probably like 5-6 years ago now. Okay, the other thing that I think is something really important, this is Dorothy. This is the lady that makes me believe more in like the metaphysical thing of plants. This is at the University of Denver, which is about 30 minutes from where I'm sitting from you guys live as I talk to you. And the reason why this book is important to me is because this is the first lady ever that I feel like had the balls on a scientific level to talk about how like rock music would affect plants. And she basically had like Indian chant music. I could probably find that real quick. So she had Indian chant music. There it is. Indian chant music for the roots. There's Bach. And then rock and roll, and you can see that there is a difference in the overall health. And these is in the early date. I think this is in like the 60s or early 70s. But what I found amazing about this is she did all of this work.
What book is that, Bryan?
It's basically one that just fell off the planet. Man. I even had to, don't tell anybody, but I had to sneak it from the library.
Oh yeah, don't show that QR code, dude.
It's not around anymore. So it's The Sound of Music and Plants.
Cool.
I don't even know if you can get this. If somebody can say that they can buy this, I owe the library a book. But this is unbelievable on the information of what this little old lady was trying to show the world. And from a metaphysical standpoint and from a scientific standpoint, I mean, she had it all set up.
She was literally just playing music to the plants above ground. There was no like rods sticking in the ground. It was just music.
Just music, and it was mostly like rock and roll, like Led Zeppelin and stuff. And she would show there's other.
But Zeppelin it looked like Zeppelin was
for this. Like we've got electric culture, we got geomancy with the rock stuff. Is there something with music?
Audio culture.
What is it? Audio culture?
Rock and
roll.
Yeah, like this is silence. I wish I could show this better. I don't know if there's a way to maybe.
That's the speaker looking at it on the left there. It looks like.
Yeah, no, there are certain times I don't know if you can really see that there, but the plants start to move away or move towards the music itself. And so that's what even got me into starting to understand more about tones and bass. And to be honest, man, growing up in Georgia, when you talk about that stuff, people think you're a lunatic, right? But then when I moved to Colorado, especially if you go to places like Boulder and stuff, if you don't talk about that kind of stuff, you're a lunatic. So it opened up my eyes to like this whole different viewpoint of taking care of plants. And I just thought that if you guys are able to find this book, The Sound of Music and Plants, there is something special to that. I think because this is as best it could be, science-based metaphysical music book on the effects of music in plants. So I just wanted to put that out. I've had that book for a long, long time. And then one of the other books that you had to like wink at the Barnes and Noble lady in the early days was the Cannabis Grow Bible. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is something that I would buy today, but I wanted to show you guys, even in the early days, I mean, a lot of this stuff was just kind of pictures. And so when you're trying to figure this out from a book, and a lot of us would skim, to be honest, and not really read everything about this. So what you guys get today in the future in 2024 and beyond is a lot of this stuff has come to light. Books like this, other kind of more, I guess, forward-thinking philosophies and theology aspects to it in a way. There's a lot to that, in my opinion, especially when you're growing cannabis as medicine. And so that's why I chose these two books. This was the first book that I was ever able to actually purchase from Barnes and Noble. The lady had to like go in the back and then bring it to the little counter that used to be in the middle, and then I had to pay for it. So these were in the early days. I think this was even before like Jorge was able to have his books and that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, this book was found when I was going to the library. I guess this would have been in my mid-20s, going to a lot of the libraries and stuff and trying to find the weird books that you wouldn't necessarily be able to find at your common bookstore. So if you are able to go to a library, you don't have enough money, maybe money is what's holding you back. I mean, I've gone through that many times in my life, but the library is always there for you. And so you can go there, you can spend all day there, go in a little corner, and you can find out a lot about this stuff from the early days, or choose to kind of move forward with some of the, in my opinion, kind of forward-thinking metaphysical stuff. So those were my two books. The Cannabis Grow Bible.
No, that green one you just had. Was that the first one you showed also?
Yeah.
The music and what is it called?
It's The Sound of Music and Plants.
Sound of
and it's
Music.
yeah, good luck trying to find it. I mean, but this is one that's like,
I know where it's at.
yeah, and I probably haven't opened it honestly in probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years probably. But it's Dorothy Redolick, I think. But a lot of this stuff was done here in Denver, Colorado. And I just if you're really new to this and you're growing cannabis as medicine, I wouldn't just dismiss the metaphysical side of stuff right away. And I know my wife is really into the science stuff, so that's why I love doing this kind of stuff, because it's a nice back and forth. But I completely understand where some people are coming from, and from the other aspect, when you're growing cannabis as medicine, I think there is really something to the energy that you have every morning when you're going into there. The almost kind of like leaving the bullshit of the world outside of your grow room. I've heard a lot of, if you will, like hippie types and the boulder types and the people that are really connected to earth. And, people get made fun of that. But at the same time, to be honest, most of these people with a work ethic and that belief system are growing some of the best cannabis I've ever seen in my life. And so there's something to that. And I think, harnessing Mother Nature, and a lot of these people live a very simplistic life where cannabis is I would say at the top of their lifestyle, but they also have other different hobbies and interests and that kind of stuff. And I wanted to put that out there too, because I see so many people starting to get pigeonholed about ways to grow cannabis, or this is the only way to grow cannabis. And that's probably the silliest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, we're all just trying to mimic Mother Nature. So I want to throw it over to Mark, and then we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, so I love that you brought up a library book, because that was a point that I really wanted to hit on tonight. Your local library is going to have things like what Bryan has right there that you might, like people are saying in the comments, that it doesn't come up on a Google search. And sadly, some of these gems,
find that book.
Yeah, some of these hidden gems are just swept under the rug, and the only places that try to protect that sanctity of information and knowledge can be a library. So use your
Think about all the libraries that are burned down, the Library of Alexandria, all the knowledge we lost. We may have lost how to build the pyramids in that, dude. Like, we lost it all. Oh, it breaks my heart. You said that. That triggered me, dude.
Yeah, so using it and like so the one thing that like I've brought up before is seed banks or seed libraries or whatever they call it at your local library. You'd be surprised how much money your town has for the library and the facility. It depends, and I say that loosely. But there are a lot of amazing things at your library, regardless of the socioeconomic level of your town. And if you're lucky enough to have a seed bank or a seed library, they have local seeds that people will go collect, and they have the kindness and heart and passion enough to literally go package up wild seeds that they forage or grow in their own yard. But think about that for a second. They package it up and they go put it into a bank to give away to people. And they do exist in more than just my town. I know that for a fact. So check. And if that isn't in your town, go to the town next door. But the other thing is that there's also local groups that you can get a part of, right? Like here there's a group called the Kalamazoo Wild Ones, right? And it's a group of old ladies, 70 plus, and I met these women at the public market in my town. So go there and branch out in community because these are the people that are going to know your climate. But these people meet once a month. They help with getting rid of invasive species, knowing what those are, educating, building up little gardens that promote beneficials, natural plants, and stuff like that. So there's things that are available to you locally that I think that you can rely on heavily. It's not just that book that Bryan showed. That's a hidden gem that you might not be able to find that online. The other thing you're not going to find online is these people in your town that have been living this for a long time, but don't necessarily have the platform to talk about it like we do. These are like the real OGs. Like, find those people, network out with those people, even if you're a 37-year-old man sitting in a room of 70-year-old women. That's the way to really harness this stuff. And really, if you're not looking to do a lot of legwork and read a lot of books, I struggle with the attention span of reading a book. So for me, that kind of outreach is really, really important. So yeah, keep that in mind for sure, guys. Let's flip it to some questions, Bri.
Hey, real quick though, if you do have trouble, I've had ADHD my whole life, so much so that I could go into another room, even in high school when we took tests and all this shit, right? Ritalin, Adderall, whole fucking, you name it, they gave that shit to me. When I would go to the libraries as a almost basically a young adult in some of the bougier libraries in the larger towns like Denver, or at least for me, also in Atlanta, they have these like sensory rooms where it's extra quiet in those rooms in the library, and you can sign up for those rooms. They usually let you have them from an hour to 2 hours, depending on how busy it is that day. But you can go in those like sensory rooms, and I promise you, it's on a whole nother level when you're trying to concentrate. Like if you need to concentrate for a job or something. It's this. I got to pass this test to get this degree. There is something about that sensory room for people that have ADHD. It's a game changer in my opinion when you're trying to focus on something. All right, questions. This one is from Aaron. I guess this would be for both of y'all. Best question, the difference in hemp and cannabis. I know a lot of people ask that. Sometimes people have even asked what's the difference between marijuana and cannabis.
Yeah, in Oklahoma, you might ask the police that because they often don't know it. The difference between hemp and cannabis, we're really under a farm bill in Oklahoma. Supposedly, I am not testing the law either, but supposedly you're able to have cuts of a cannabis plant while it's in veg, right? So I have no idea. I ain't screwing with that. I'm just growing it at home and doing my own thing.
It has to do with like the THC percentage in the plant, correct?
Yeah. That's the ultimate thing is the measurements of the THC. It needs to be under 0.3, I believe. 0.3 THC for it to be considered hemp under our farm bill. And cannabis, there's a Hebrew, guys. I got my doctorate in seminary and all this. I don't know everything, but I do know what I'm talking about on some things. There is a cannabusa in the Hebrew Bible, in the Hebrew language, and it is cannabis. They used it in incense and all kinds of things. Now, when cannabis became illegal, the government switched the name to marijuana because it was a more degrading word that was used among, south of the border folks. And so they labeled it as marijuana. Its name for us should be cannabis, if you ask me. I always call it cannabis, and that's the better word for it. But if I look at a plant, can I just look at it? A plant in veg form, can I just look at it and tell you if it's cannabis or hemp? No, I don't know that. I'm assuming that, because hemp will flower, but it won't produce the THC. The cannabis is going to flower and produce the THC. I mean, there's times you can't tell the difference at all. The hemp will probably be thinner and smaller and airier more than likely, but there's lots of cannabis I've seen that's thin, small, and airy also.
There's still people out there that can't tell the difference between synthetic and real weed. I mean, not a lot of people, but but yeah, no, the actual plant itself, hemp is going to be stockier and less maybe bud producing, but depends what the purpose of the hemp is for.
Yeah,
so
fiber.
That's a tough one.
Fiber.
I would also say hemp is usually like the kind of uglier girl in the group, where from a cannabis standpoint, those are usually the prettier girls or potential prettier girls in the group. I guess that's how you could potentially tell, but it is pretty tough. So you just grow as many plants as you can. That eye for a variety of different plants only comes from growing a bunch of different plants. You can't just look at it in a magazine and then have that skill set. So grow a variety of different plants, and once your skill sets are up, have that male and female thing, and then you can start to really build your attributes, if you will, by being able to identify males almost instantly when their nuts drop. All right, Kid Mac, homemade BT, please explain how to make. I'm going to throw that obviously to Mr. Kep.
Well, I don't even know if I know how to make homemade BT, but I have ordered spores before, and I have you kind of do it like an EM. You put the spores in, you put some molasses, some water, and you let it, and it brews like a beer. Basically, it's anaerobic, and you got to have a bubbler on it and stuff to keep oxygen out as best you can. Bacillus thuringiensis, I can't make it, but I can order spores and do it. Mark, do you have a better answer to that? Hey, shout out Kid Mac too. This guy's a big help to me. My man, Kid Mac.
No, the only thing that I would recommend is just finding a good product. And so there's mosquito bits if you're looking for the bits. But there's also an organic product that you have to buy in a bigger volume called Aquabac. And it's made out of organic corn cob. So if you're just aware of the different products that are out there, but if you're looking to fight fungus gnats, the best approach to that is always going to be fostering biodiversity in the soil. Gnats just have a way of building tolerance, or I don't even know what the right word for it is, but they have a way of working around the BT over time. It'll work effectively if you're applying it effectively. There's also other factors that are involved in that conversation as well, because you could have pockets in your grow area that are holding water that gnats can proliferate in. So yeah, I would always go with like biodiversity, like some predatory species in the soil, some hypoaspis miles, some rove beetle, stuff like that. Build those populations up, especially while you're playing with the BT, because they're not going to hurt one another at all. They play nice together, so it's a double faceted approach to that. But making it at home, I don't know anything about that, and I don't even try, just because if it's not for me, it's for sale. There's too much liability, and I'm not trying to make chemicals and stuff. And it's not a chemical, it's a regulated thing. So
I'll say real quick, I have over 200 separate bins, probably at least, plus fish tanks, all of these different soil little things that I have to take care of. And as time has progressed, all of them start to take on their own little personalities, if you will. And the only thing that I have found, and that's why I'm continuing to be here and educate, that works for me is mark shit. And I know obviously we're all sitting here and we're all buddies and stuff, but there's
It works.
a huge benefit to using the diversity and that kind of stuff, and then knowing that those rove beetles are going around and actively seeking out the fungus gnat larvae, to me has been a game changer for years now, and I've been using that, and I bank my my marriage in a way on the fact that those things are effective, because if my wife had to walk downstairs and there was white flies and fungus gnats and all the stuff that was in the early days of trying to grow cannabis with a living soil system when we first started this stuff, it was extremely hard, at least for my little crew, to manage IPM after like 1 or 2 successful harvests. We'd feel like we got this shit going, and then all of a sudden all hell would break loose. So to know that that seems to always come when you're building soil systems, whether I have plants in them or I have isopods, the biodiversity is what allows me to sleep at night knowing that this stuff is improving over time the same way it should be. And IPM is, again, where you earn your stripes. I mean, that's where you become a general. Because if you can grow great cannabis, fantastic. But if you're growing that great cannabis and you're able to protect that cannabis, that's when you become almost like a shining star to a lot of people. And then, of course, don't sell your skill sets to them. Keep that shit for yourself and become something on your own. Be an entrepreneur. All right, J5, Faux 20. Favorite ferment for late flower, and do I have time to start one now?
Okay, so I'm a JLF dude. I just use JLF mostly. I like fermented plant extracts, but I can speak to your question. Your favorite ferment for late flower? Typically, what I always used to use are banana ferments, fermented plant juice. Yeah, FPJ. But sorry, fermented FFJ. Too many of those acronyms. Fermented fruit juices is what you want to use. It takes about 7 to 10 days to make that. You got plenty of time to make it. If you're just going into flower, you got time to make it. Now, if you want to optimize it, yeah, you'd want to have done this already. You'd want to already have your little bit going before flower. That's kind of the way it works. But you got time to do it. So start one now. Go find some old bananas at the store that are on sale. Bring them back. You're going to keep the peels and everything. You can chop them up. The better you chop them up, and they don't have to be mush, but just pieces. And the better chopped up, the more the nutrient sugar can pull out. But you put the bananas in, and you'll put the same amount of brown sugar in. You mix those together. You let the juice start to form at the bottom. You pour that juice out. I think it's like 1 to 100, the ratios. I don't know because I don't do ratios. But yeah, go ahead and make it, dude. But I tell you what, a JLF, you can feed JLF from day 1 to the day you cut. And it'll be so much simpler than making ferments. If you haven't made ferments, it sounds like you have. If you haven't made ferments, you should make them. Like Bryan said earlier, get your hands on it, start smelling it, seeing the results of what you've made. Like he was saying, Chris Trump said, smell it. There are things that smell right in the KNF world. There are things that smell correct and things that smell incorrect. In the Jadam world, nothing smells bad or good. It's just what Mother Nature's doing, and you use it. All right.
And again, think of this more in chess. So if you're in late flower, then you kind of already missed the boat. That's why in the early days we'd joke, hey, the girls are off to college, because there's nothing you can really do once they're off to college, right? You hope you raise them correctly and they're going to make good choices. Same thing with these plants. You're hoping that they're going to be able to stand the test of time and be able to push off as many pest pressures as possible. And that's really where you're at when you're first getting into this kind of stuff. And protecting the plants and having that diversity makes life so much easier than trying to spray for something and something else comes. And I believe it was Matthew Gates, to get to Mark's point, with the exoskeletons. That's where a lot of these like super predatory nuisance type pests, they I guess somehow are able to put that poison into their exoskeleton and then find ways to combat that. And that's why you have to continuously change things. That's why Roundup has to continuously change their formulas and stuff so that it's more and more poison. Because however the bugs are able to figure this stuff out, it goes through their system in the first place. So if you're way smarter than me, you might be able to understand more about what Matthew Gates is talking about with those exoskeletons and how it like kind of pushes through the insect's body.
So before you move on from that question, real quick, we had Chris on earlier in the year. This is episode 27, which is crazy, but like episode 15, maybe something like that. Country Roots. I have it. The reason I have it sitting here is A, I use it, but B, I carry this on MI Beneficials. So if you ever want to support the show, support us at MI Beneficials, it's not too late because we do carry this product, and the reason I carry this product is because it's amazing, and it's a lot of stuff that Chris grows on his farm here in Michigan. It's going to be like last year's ferments. So it's like your over-ripened fruits, like Kevin was saying. Instead of going to the store, he's growing these organically and harvesting them late season, and then he ferments them with more of like an FPJ approach. Like he doesn't call it FPJ, he just calls it late bloom, but it's a fermented plant juice for sure. And he uses stuff like overripened peaches, berries, bananas. Obviously you can't grow those here, so that's going to be imported. Plums, stuff like pumpkins. So that we do carry this product. It's really reasonably priced, and he recommends, because he's more of like Kevin's more of like make as much as I can inputs. That's the beauty of making your own stuff, is you don't have to worry about measurements. But if you're buying it, obviously you're worried more about cost. So on this, it's 2 to 5 milliliters per gallon, kind of depending on what you feel like the plants need. But it's a great product. I do use it. Right now I'm using he has an early bloom. So the early bloom is going to be underripened fruits and stuff like that. So, but it's the cost itself should be motivation. Like if you're buying the product now to have an amazing end product this season, like you're supporting a great company. But like the thought process that should be happening is like, I should be thinking about next year, right? Just like Chris makes this from last year's harvest for this year. And just like Kevin is making ferments and stuff right in you're making labs right now. I saw on Instagram, but he's making an abundance of stuff right now because he's got the weather on his side. He can do it outside right now. That's only going to last for us for another month. Maybe. Like we're going to be October 1, October we could see frost at any point, so right now is the time to start the cost savings for yourself, and that's where your eyes should be set. There you go. I mean, Kevin's always working so that he doesn't have to buy the inputs, and that's where the flex is for me. It's like the 10-cent grams, like the best 10-cent grams you'll ever find. That's the flex. So that's my 2 cents on that one. Sorry.
All right. Our next one is, I guess more for you, Kevin. Australian guy, I think this is from my Instagram. Guard slugs are killing my vegetable seedlings. Need help.
What was that thing? We talked about this a few times.
Sluggo.
Okay, Sluggo. And then didn't somebody say, so what was the deal
with beer trap? A beer trap.
It was something else. Milky spores. Is that the name of it? Milky
I've
spores?
never heard of that before.
Yeah,
but
I've never either. And a guy just typed it on the comments, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's really it." Somebody might look up milky spores. But yeah, go ahead. Tell them about Sluggo and all that mess.
Well, Sluggo is, yes. Sluggo is what you're going to want to use, just like a granular product, and it's organic listed, so it's not going to screw up your soil biology really if it's outdoors. Indoors, I wouldn't use it just because it affects worms and stuff. But yeah, Sluggo would be like a product you can apply right now, or a beer traps, like a beer moat. Somehow you build like a trench around your plant and put beer in it so it stops them. Or you could wrap like sticky tape around the bottom of the stalk so that when they go up it, they might get stuck. But I don't know if that even would work with slugs. But yeah, that's your best approach.
All right. Next one. Take or already made.
What would be your unicorn strain that you'll make or already made? Well, man, you're always looking for the unicorn. I've had lots of people, say, man, you nailed the blueberry strain. Actually, Gin Traders, the guy on Gin Traders, he just emailed me or DM'd me. He said, "Are you the grower of what was it? It was I mixed a DJ Short blueberry F4, and I crossed it to my blueberry squealer." And blueberry squealer has all kinds of blueberries in it, but he said it was the best tasting blueberry he ever had. I'll tell you what I'm liking right now is Cherry on a Grande. I know that name's come up a few times, but man, I'm smoking on it right now. I'm smoking on Cherry on a Grande that I grew last summer, guys. That's how much hash rosin you get when you grow big fat plants outside. But I've got a brand new Cherry on a Grande crossed to Peach Pistols. The Peach Pistols washed at 5%. That's a shout out to Kid Matt cut, man. He got that cut. It's a 5% washer, which is huge in the solventless hash world. And so those two have been crossed, and then it got pollinated with a male Cherry on a Grande. So I'm kind of excited about this one that's coming up. There'll be reg seeds that I'm making this summer, but I got really good strains going. They're good and frosty. My stuff's always been terpy. But with the addition of a lot of the belief strains that came about, some of the choice ones that were just so frosty, that Peach Pistols was one, big time washer. Anyway, we crossed it. So Cherry on a Grande, Peach Pistols, those are some films that I will have on the website probably by next month, guys. They're coming out, and these guys are fire. I'll have a whole package set also where you can buy all of them for a much cheaper price.
My unicorn strain would be GMO with like sour diesel, something like that.
Okie Grower wants to know what's the easiest way to set up a black soldier larva bin.
Well, hold on, Brian. What's yours, quick?
Oh, man, to me it would be some kind of like gas, yeah, cross with I don't even know at this point anymore.
Sour funk.
Sour, like a super lemon haze maybe or something. Play around. I think there's something with gas and citrus. I remember in the early days too with grapefruit. So that would probably be something that I would want to play around with. Try to find a holy grail in that sense. Our, I guess, generation is getting a little bit older. They have a little bit of more money. And I think if you're growing in kind of that gray market, you might want to think about that kind of stuff, because in the days when I could get the San Fernando Valley, and it was the truest one, I guess, for the gentleman that used to live in California, he would go above and beyond to meet up with me and like drive closer to where I was and stuff, just because of the nostalgia of that. And in my opinion, that's how you're going to separate yourself, instead of always trying to think of what's going to be the next best hype. Is try to grow stuff that has such a nostalgia to it, is that unicorn, that people are going to, this takes me back to the days. Because if I could find a good super lemon haze concentrate connect, they would get my money, just because I missed that the real
It's
citrus.
that's such a rare terp to wash out, though.
Right. That's my point. So you got to find, I mean, these when you're talking hunts, these are the kind of things that obviously aren't easy to do, but if they were, then people would already have figured it out. And when you're talking unicorn, that's what I mean. That would be the holy grail for a lot of that.
Hell yeah.
What's the easiest way to set up a black soldier fly larvae bin?
Compost. start composting. But the easiest way, if you want an actual bin, you can buy them on Amazon for $100, $160, or you get you a tote. And at the top, it's going to need an air hole where, and most people will put like a T. Like if you had a flat lid, just a flat lid, and you have like a hole cut here with a T, and there's 2 open ends here where flies can go in and get the food. And then a lot of people will have like even drainage ports on the bottom or something like that at the very bottom where there'll be liquid kind of drain out some. But guys, basically, I'm not a black soldier fly bin guy because there's so many in my compost, but basically black soldier fly bins are just like controlled composting. Like black soldier flies will like certain foods. They'll chow them up fast, and there's not a lot of liquid to these foods. Like throwing a bunch of fruits and vegetables, watermelons, cantaloupe, cucumbers, tomatoes, you do that in compost, and the next day you're going to have drainage probably on the bottom a little bit. And in a black soldier fly bin, you don't want a lot of that drainage. You kind of want more of a dry fill, maybe moist fill, if you will. But there's certain things to feed them to keep your bins a little more clean, because what a lot of people do is they actually try to scoop out the black soldier flies for their chickens or for frass, gardening, whatever the case may be. And so there's definitely ways to make a bin. But if you put, like we talked about earlier, if you put food scraps out on the ground in the summertime in Oklahoma, in 2 weeks, there'll be black soldier flies crawling all in it, eating it. Oh, today in my compost, guys, I was looking at my compost. I counted 12 black soldier flies just flying around. Man, they're everywhere. They're just laying eggs constantly.
Yeah, it's almost like if you have a worm bin and you maybe add a few, then you won't be asking, how do I get more of these? From Derek on Instagram, I take it. Any tips on keeping PM under control in a greenhouse?
I'll tell you what I use, and Mark's probably got ideas too. Regalia is something kind of expensive, but you can buy it. Man, it definitely stops the powdery mildew out here in my garden. I grow a lot of zinnias, and zinnias just encourage powdery mildew. Their leaves will be white. You'll see it all over them. And my zinnias grow right next and onto and touching my cannabis plants constantly. So I've never had a bad problem with it. But like Bryan said earlier, I keep up with my IPM. That's what will separate people. You can grow a beautiful veg plant. The problems mostly come when flower starts. You got big issues then. And if you haven't been keeping up with the healthier plants or keeping the pathogens off and things like that, you just birthed a baby into those conditions. And now you're fighting constantly to try to defend that little baby. Whereas if you're constantly maintaining some presence of IPM or like, just a OHN, EM5 lab, that type of thing, which doesn't really just kill off stuff, but it's more of a cleansing, kind of a beneficial spray. Just keeping up with stuff like that will help. Now, I've heard of people using milk. I don't know how organic you're trying to go, Derek, but people will use milk, 2 parts milk, 1 part water, I believe it is, and spray that on their plants. Water-soluble calcium is supposed to help with that also.
I'm not 100% on this, but I think if it's been pasteurized, that it's not going to work. So you would need raw milk to kill the PM. And if you're trying to have more of chest moves, getting more calcium, more silica, those kind of things. Harley Smith, I think his name is. You guys know the guy that worked for MPK Industries? He always had his little like doctor coat on. His name escapes me here, but anyway, he did a lot of research with the Dutch growers, and it was basically overnight. Their whole livelihood is in these Dutch greenhouses, hoop houses, and so overnight they basically said you can't use any pesticides, fungicides, anything anymore. Figure it out. And what they, after I believe it was like a decade or so, they figured out is the more calcium and silica that the plant is taking up, there's less room because the plant has basically like crystallized. From the way that I understand it, that's the same thing that we do with water. Like when water's inside our body, it's not the same way that we think like water while we're drinking it. It's crystallized. And so this is the kind of stuff that we can go down rabbit holes and hopefully talk to somebody that can explain it better than I am right here. But that is on a whole nother level of being able to protect your plants, is if you can get that calcium up, maybe even learning to pinch stalks. There's so many different ways to kind of like trick the plant into thinking that she's hurt a little bit. It's kind of the same way when you go to the gym and you're building a bicep. So yes, it's tearing down that bicep. Yes, you just kind of pinch the stalk and and you can almost hear the fibers snap when you start to get a little like skill to it. And if as long as you do it softly enough, she'll bounce right back. And then you can kind of see it as taking the girls to the gym and all these different things. But you have to have enough calcium. You have to have enough silica. Otherwise, they kind of flop over and then they never bounce back. So there's a lot to this. There's a crystallization, I think, that happens with a super healthy plant that doesn't allow the powdery mildews. Harley Smith, I think, is that dude's name. I hope maybe the chat knows. All right.
So real quick on that one, it's gonna, like when in a greenhouse, it's gonna be a completely, like, if you're dealing with PM now, the problem is that the fix is increasing the airflow, right? The problem is you already have the spores there in the greenhouse. So at this point, you really have to, like regalia. It works, but it comes back. I mean, have you ever been able to successfully get rid of PM for the long haul?
I don't. That's
once you get it.
Not it. That's it's basically, I'm kind of spraying specific areas because I'll never get rid of the PM because, like you said, it's all there. And what reveals the powdery mildew are the swings in temperatures. And so we've got 68-degree nights right now and 100-degree days. We're having massive swings. And so it just reveals itself quite easily. But no, I don't spray to like prevent, because I'm spraying outside. In my mind is what I'm talking about. I spray kind of around my plants. I really don't care. I'm not going to use that much of my regalia because that's just too much.
So, like in a greenhouse setting, it's a blessing and a huge curse. And this is where I'm like conflicted too, because I have like a greenhouse, right? But that really is just classified with plastic. Unless you have that double wall with the air blowing between it, and you have good airflow, good intake, good outflow, and a temperature control to the point where you're not getting the wetness on your plants every morning. That's when and then on top of that, having space between plants, thinning out, like Kevin said, Kevin almost sounds crazy when he talks about how he defoliates, but you have to consider the fact that he's growing without a roof. He's getting rained on every time it rains out there deep into October. He's dealing with 100% humidity. It might not even be raining, but it's still 100%. It's just like a wall of water just sitting on those plants. So if you have any little mistake going on as far as defoliation and cleaning up those inners and pampering those, all those apex branches, if you will, that's like that's kind of what Kevin, I feel like, harps on that a lot about. And so for me, if I'm not able to do those things and have that temperature and environmental control going on in the greenhouse, I'm taking the walls off so that I have natural air passage, but I don't have the rain coming down on top, right? So hopefully it minimizes the amount of dew and all that other crap, because there's just natural airflow. It keeps the it keeps the natural flow of air. There's something to do with that microbiology in the air going on. So yeah, sorry, I didn't want to go. That PM is brutal, but controlling it, it's tough.
Yeah. Has it been proven that PM is systemic?
I don't think it has. But
that's still up in the air, yeah.
But I think like feeding your plants things like chitinase and like salicylic acid through aloe, and like giving it the building blocks that it needs. And salicylic acid doesn't come exclusively through aloe, but like anything that provides that salicylic acid for the plant, it provides like what it needs to be able to like sequester those problems, not necessarily stop them from happening, but you might notice like it'll slow the spread of PM, or it'll be more like better off to defend against pest issues and stuff like that. Um, but I don't. If you talk to Coot, like Clackamas Coot, he would say that yes, like uh, it's systemic, and that if you feed the plants the right things, that you can avoid it. So, and that, like chitinase is this big talking point.
So it's basically like a virus that never goes away, but as long as you keep her healthy and stress free, theoretically she doesn't rear her head.
Yeah, I hate PM, man. That's the worst in my book.
Root aphids, that might be. Stonemason, what size of beds do you guys like for your indoor living soil beds? Do you use soil horizons when building them, like explained by Leighton Morrison? I use 30 gallons with his horizons with, I would imagine it was with great success or something. I think got cut off.
Yeah. So wow, there's lots of ways to go with this. I used to work. I used to work commercial growing, and then I did, consulting, and now I just hang out with processors because that's where the good stuff is. Every guy that grows with living soil beds gets the biggest ones they can, the biggest ones they can fit. And again, the idea is this: if you've ever grown in 3-gallon pots, which I did last winter indoors, it was no fun. I was watering 3 times a week. That's just too much because I got to get the JLF out and got to get all the water out and all that mess. It's cold. So I that was the first time I grew in small pots because I was trying to be like, okay, everybody, all the commercial growers, most commercial growers who grow in pots around here will grow in 3 gallons, maybe 5, but small because it's a short-term thing that's happening, and you want a quick turnaround. You use less dirt, there's less mess, it's quicker. And so I was like, yeah, let me try that. And I don't like it myself, too much watering. So I have always grown in 10-gallon or more. I typically will grow in 25-gallon pots uh, and just pack them all in gasoline alley. And they're all just packed. It's all just packed in. And really, if I had just one long, huge living soil bed in there, it would be awesome. I've actually thought about cutting the floor out of my shed and just creating soil underneath it and growing straight up that way from the ground
That's
to
that's
the
the
shed.
that's the play, dude.
That would be it.
That is the play. I'm telling you. I know people that have done that in like pole barns that they bought, and they had a concrete slab. They cut out rows and put in built beds with cedar back when it was cheap, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I like to see a 4x8 bed, but most people here probably can't fit one in their grow space. 4x8 is going to be the best because of every reason that Kevin just mentioned right there. You can literally flip the lights off and leave that thing for 4 months. I know people that have done it and do it. Had kids, couldn't deal with the grow downstairs, shut the lights down, come back, you reinvigorate it with some ferments if you want to go cheap, or if you're using products, like use some Kulaya, use some we sell Regenerator. It's cheap, it's not expensive, it's not an expensive product, to break down the hydrophobic bonds and to kind of like reinvigorate that top layer. But the point is down below it's still wet, it's still alive, right? So you can reinvigorate the soil like that, for that regard, you never have to throw that soil away. But if you're going smaller, like a 4x4 bed would probably be more like attainable for people. Highly recommend 4x4, 3x3 bed. When you go from if you're looking to recycle the soil, not touch it, and do a true no-till like indoor, where it's like just top dressing and watching it kind of recede down a little bit and all that. 3x3, 4x4, 65-gallon pot would be great. And people are worried about plants like getting too close. So if you're really like trying to have like 4 plants in a grow, go 430s, but don't go smaller than 25. I would agree with Kevin on that. If you're trying to recycle the soil, it's tough because the root mass takes up a lot of that real estate.
If you have enough humic material in your soil, you can water tap water, which is what I do in my garden. Straight from tap, straight to the soil. It'll adjust the pH itself. That's what nature's able to do, but you need enough material for that to happen. So those
Yeah.
small plants, those small buckets, the pots you grow in, you'll often see those red stems because it's so hard to hit that pH, because you're trying to do the work of the microbe by balancing the pH in that little bitty pot. But when it's big and when you got a lot of mass in there, it's like a chunk of Mother Nature, and then it can really optimize its work. You Stonemason, good question. You mentioned a guy named Leighton Morrison, and if you guys do not know this cat, you will learn a ton. And I will give you the iPod or the podcast to go listen to. The podcast itself is called Shaping Fire. And then you need to type in Shaping Fire, Leighton Morrison composting, and you're going to have your mind blown. I've watched that. I've watched it, or I've listened to it maybe 100 times or more. I just let it play often because I constantly am picking up what he is saying. Leighton Morrison goes deep tracks into composting, and he's created his own world down there. And once you get down there, you start to see what he's been doing. He separates compost into all these different textures and things: Guam, Palm, Psalm, all these things. So yeah, Shaping Fire, Leighton Morris composting. Great podcast.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically, if you take what he is saying, you put in the soil horizons, and you are a very patient person, it's pretty hard to fuck that up. And so you just have to make sure that you don't, he's pretty famous for saying, don't be a moron, meaning don't put more on and more on and more on and adding amendments and thinking that you got to kelp, and now I got all these different algae and green algae and blue algae, and all of a sudden you've added too many things. So there's something to that, and I think with the soil horizontal system, Marco was able to take it to the next level, I think, also. So there's a lot of good videos with him as well, with the composting worms and the life and the springtails and all that. So it's really cool when one person has something, then it comes into the community, and somebody keeps kind of taking it to the next level. And hopefully we're doing these also because I hope that somebody here, especially if they're in their like early 20s, is able to take that and then play around with it for a while and then come and teach the community something else that they figured out. Because even when we first started doing podcasts, a lot of this information wasn't as freely shared. So it was pretty interesting. All right, Rick, real quick. My indoor bed is still fresh. Are there any known beneficial companion plants that are annuals for indoor?
I mean, I always like to start some flowers from seed, marigolds being the one thing that I can typically grow indoors with cannabis plants. This year, I actually cloned marigold plants, guys. First time I've done that, and it worked successfully. I got them grow. I got cloned marigold plants growing in my garden right now. I assume they will flower with conditions right, but we're about to find out. So I cloned all kinds of stuff this year. It was awesome. But Mark, you got anything for that one?
No, but I love that, like a calendula / marigold plant. Perfect annual, and it can reseed. If you just let it ride out, it'll reseed. So that's a great one.
Yeah.
Something to consider. And like when you have a bigger volume of soil, you don't have to be so worried about what's growing in the bed, right? Like all of a sudden you're like, okay, cool, like sharing the love. As long as it's chopped and put back in the soil, it's all part of the system. Like it's net positive in my book, always.
I played around with the butterfly bush, and I think there's something to that as well when you're trying to hold beneficials. So if you have kind of a higher end garden center, you could probably go and pick the healthiest one and play around with that beneficial butterfly bush, especially indoors. And please report back to us, because that was when I was playing around with that. I would notice, man, the praying mantis love it, the jumping spiders love it, the ladybugs love it. So it's almost like, must be like a holy grail or something to that little world.
Smells really good too.
Yeah. And then when it dies, it's just like these little sticks. So it's not like it takes up this huge space or anything. You just like kind of break it down real quick. All right. If I'm trying to use Pro Mix for a cloning base, should I match the pH to what my mom's were in? I'm only using FAA and JLF FPE.
Boy, young Deso, he's in it, isn't he? If I'm going to use Pro Mix for a cloning base, should I match the pH for what my mom's are in? Well, I think best practices would say yes. You try to keep everything similar as possible. You know, that's the idea. I can tell you right now, I just showed a cloning video on Instagram of what my cloning machine looks like. A couple people asked about it. But in my cloning machine, I clone outside in the elements. I do not pH my water. I simply cut the plants, stick them in the cloning machine. I wait about 5-6 days. I see the roots are growing. Now
It's like a sprayer. It's like a sprayer underneath. Yeah. And I used to do that in California. When you have the right environment, that's the best. I mean, like you have 80% humidity every day. What better can you ask for? That's why I have no qualms sending springtails with no heat, cooling, nothing to try to regulate nothing when it's 70 and 70. Because what's better than the outside temperature? There's nothing, you know?
I think there's something too, like just the atmosphere of outdoors with sunlight. Like whatever is floating around, I'm sure you could break it down to a variety of things, but there's something special to just life in general. And so when you're outdoors and you can be outdoors, not only do human beings like it, but plants love it as well. And so when you're growing indoors, realize that you're just trying to replicate as best you can. And I think one of the easiest ways I think to be able to take it to the next level is to grow decent weed indoors, so that you can grow fantastic weed outdoors. And I do think that those are two different skill sets, and I'm sure Kevin would be able to, if he wanted to. But I would imagine those are almost like two different sets. Like for me to compare, it'd be like if I'm playing poker, if I'm playing pot limit Omaha, that's both of those are poker, but those are two different mindsets on what's going to allow me to be successful, because it's two different skill sets, right?
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense. All right, Okie Grower wants to know, I was going to throw this over to you, actually, Mark, for the first one. What do you think about crystals in the soil? Have you ever played around with that? And then Kevin?
No, I haven't, honestly.
So, I don't have soils in my crystal. I'm sorry, I don't have crystals in my soil, but you should be aware that crystals do have a type of, I don't know what you call it, power, something like that. There is a, God, what would it be? In the penumbra of it, there's just something there to it. Just like you talk about, Bryan. I don't have crystals, guys. I don't do any crystals. To answer your questions, I have no idea about crystals. If you have crystals, put them in your garden. Why not? Crystals are nature. It's kind of like what that book Sakuteiki is saying. Look what nature looks like and imitate it in your garden. It's more homey, if you will. Maybe the plants like it more. But we've got a lot of guys even in the chats. Like we've got the electromagnetism of Rick, and then God, the other one was asking about paramagnetism. There's all kinds of weird things that you can do. And the point is this: your garden has the meaning you put into it. And that sounds it sounds like it's your truth, but we're not talking about that. I'm talking about gardening, and I'm talking about your place of peace. I'm talking about the place you can go to and just look at things you love, and they're responding to your husbandry. They're responding to your love. It's growing. You're taking care of it. I'm talking about that. If you have a place like that, the meaning is there that you put into it. My garden's meaning is mental peace, mental health, feed my kids, make this place homey, give my kids a place that they want to come back to. They see that this is a place that provides. It's just, there's so much meaning to it. And so when I walk out into my garden, the meaning is there. and the passion is there, and the love is there, and the joy is there, and you just get lost in it, man. There's so much to do in a garden. And so yeah, if you want to use those things, you use them to create the meaning that you want, that makes you a better person, and it's more pleasing to you.
All right, quick story. When I was in my early days making money illegally, basically, my mother came to visit, and my mother found out through basically an ex of what I was really doing, and so she was talking to me, telling me how she thought she could help. She was talking about crystals and how the importance of quartz, and I made fun of her, to be honest. I thought I was really silly, you know, just kind of, all right, mom, like, you know, just kind of like dismissed it. Well, she hid this quartz, so it's probably about this long, in one of the plants that I had, without me knowing it. And so basically, as I was growing my plants and growing them out, there was this one plant that was sticking out. And I remember I was filling up my ice in my refrigerator at the time. And I remember my mom asking me, like, well, how'd you grow? How did it turn out? My mom's never asked me that shit in my life. Ever. It really asked me anything about cannabis, to be honest, unless I was in trouble, like in high school kind of thing. And so when she asked me that, I was like, why? Why does that matter? And she was like, well, did any of the plants stand out to you? And I was like, yeah, actually, there was a plant that stood out to me. She was like, well, go down and play around in the dirt and see if there's anything in there. And so when I went down in there, the crystal was in there. And to this day, there's, you know, I don't know really what else to say other than that's been my experience from using crystals. And from that point forward, I would say that there's maybe something to that aspect. And I know for a lot of people that's hard to fathom, but play around with it, see what it does for yourself. Maybe have your significant other hide it in one of the plants, kind of that same scenario, and then see if it, because that way then it's not a, you know, your consciousness or however deep you want to get into it isn't infected by that. It'll be just whether that actually is working or not. And I know a lot of people, again, especially in the upper northern sides of Colorado, you wouldn't catch a living soil grow without crystals, without even the like little pyramid things. If you guys have ever seen those with like the copper and all these, they get into it where I live. You guys got anything to add to that?
No,
No,
do it how
but
you
don't
want. I
believe in
agree. I agree. Do it. Make your garden how you want. Try things out. You know, don't put somebody else's meaning to it. Put your meaning to it. Why are you doing it? Therefore, go do it.
Yeah, I think you know, you should listen to your mom sometimes too, man. You know. All right, there we go. Kevin, is there anything about paramagnetism in the Japanese book you suggested?
Sakuteiki, no, there is no paramagnetism in there. The only thing they mention, paramagnetism has to do with the kind of the attraction of the magnetic forces. It's a weak attraction, but the what they discuss in that book is called geomancy, which is basically earth divination. And again, that's the culture that they were in. They use nature because it's more of an animism, if you know what that, you know, where God is in everything, a pantheism idea. But they would believe that there were spirits or beings or demons, or whatever the case may be, inhabiting Mother Nature, and you needed to act right. You needed to treat Mother Nature good. You know, that's kind of the basic, the meta ethic is do not mistreat Mother Nature. Use her, be benefited from her, take the gold from her and use it and make yourself better. That's why she's here. Therefore, how can we use it the best? You know, that's what they're trying to figure out in that book. So no paramagnetism, just geomancy.
All right, another one from Happy Dirt Dude. It's good to see the questions progressing as you can see the skill set starting to turn in. So this week I learned about using a refractometer, right? A lot of us learned about that a long time ago. That's for Brix levels, if you're not familiar with this kind of stuff. To check my plant sugar content. The info lets you know how well the plant can fight off bugs and weeds. Do you guys use one?
No, because I'm not as cool as you, Happy Dirt Dude. Every time I look at Happy Dirt Dude, he's doing something better than I am. Freaking fantastic. No, I don't use a refractometer, but I do know that fruit farmers will use refractometers to measure the sugar in the fruit depending on its ripeness. Yeah, so that's pretty cool, Rick. Happy Dirt Dude. That that you're using that. And I would be interested to know, like, if sugar content gets higher at the end of flower, and stuff like that. That'd be interesting to know those measurements. Happy Dirt Dude, you should maybe do something on Instagram for us a little bit.
Yeah, Bricks Levels, I think, was an early garage way kind of doing things. But I also want to point out that Matthew Gates, again, I think what you're talking about is John Kemp, I think is his name, where he talks about if the sugar contents are high enough that the insects won't eat the bugs, right? And a lot of people believe that for a long time. And then Matthew Gates came along, and he, through a lot of podcasts and that kind of stuff, disputes a lot of that, says that that's not necessarily the reason why. And so that's why I like to always come from this stuff from both sides, because a lot of this stuff you can easily think, okay, that makes sense. But then when you're managing a large canopy of plants, maybe you have, John Kemp, yeah. So I think there's still a lot of debate out there with a lot of bright minds, and I'm not smart enough to say one way or the other. What I want to give you is that you need two rabbit holes to kind of go down that kind of stuff, because just if you're growing healthy plants, I think I've seen a lot of growers, they kind of get lazy with that, whether it takes them a month, a year, whatever, 5 years, all of a sudden they do get attacked from pest pressures. So there's something too about just growing healthy plants all the time. So there's the John Kemp view, and then there's the Matthew Gates view, and they're drastically different. And I think that's why it's important to kind of learn from both. Do you have anything to add to that, Mark? Yeah.
The only thing I would say is, I mean, that's why ferments are beautiful, right? Because if you're looking for bricks, you're going to find it in fermented plant. You're going to find it in or specific, like FFJs or FPJs or FPEs. There's going to be a lot of sugar in those types of things. So when you're feeding your plants the types of things that Kevin's talking about, that he uses religiously, indoor, outdoor, he doesn't have to worry about bricks. His plants are plenty well off on bricks. You can also, like, one thing that I love to add, especially this time of year in abundance, is yucca and kolaya. And the stuff that we sell called Regenerator, it's a pure liquid extract. So it has all the sugars and stuff that you don't get in that powdered, processed product that is, you use like a little sprinkle and it makes a big soapy bath. It's more tailored towards plants. So you're going to get sugar content out of something like a liquid kolaya, liquid yucca, especially.
Were you making something like that on one of your last videos? I saw frothy, foamy stuff you were making.
That was literally, so that 50-gallon drum of water, I put in was it 2 milliliters? So it was about 100 milliliters of which equates to 6.5 tablespoons. So 6.5 tablespoons of the liquid extract makes 50 gallons, and that's on high level. Normally I would only do 3 tablespoons for that, and it still gives you the head if you like agitate the water and spray it around. I just mix it because I don't necessarily want the head, because the head is like the gonna give like that like smothering effect, to the top of my soil. I just want it for everything else. Secondary metabolites, triterpenoid saponins, just the wetting effect, So something to consider.
For you guys that don't have the money for a refractometer, if your plants are at the praying level and have started that way or been there for a while, just know that you're on your way to high bricks. Those always seem to correlate. I thought Lisa came up, or at least made a good point. Different time of day, you get different readings, very inconsistent data, just one test. I think that's why a lot of people in the early days were all about bricks. But then after the community started to learn more about how inconsistent it was more, right, how do we just know, hey, we got to get the calcium up to get the sugars. That correlates to high bricks. And then if we have praying leaves, well, now all of a sudden, unless you're growing on a commercial level, but if you're growing for yourself, immediately, all right, I have high bricks, or I'm starting on the road to high bricks when I have praying leaves. All right. When springtails are jumping all over the place, are they mad?
Uh, it's not that they're mad or happy. Yeah, I guess I would say if they're not happy, for sure. It's more that they're disturbed, like in a cultured setting, right? Like in a sealed container, they're very slow moving. You're not like they're not jumping all over the place, right? In their natural like state. Same thing under the soil. So when
Do
you
they
see
run though? Are they running? Or are they just staying still? Are they
they're just
walking?
no, they're moving around. They're moving around. They're busy as can be, but they're not inherently like they're not. Well, some of them are like so we carry a white species of springtail called a bilious ant, which I'm like as I'm culturing them more and more, I'm loving them more, but they act more like an ant as opposed to a springtail where they're running around all over the place. They look like a springtail, but they are like moving quick. They're not jumping all over the place, or like I said, when they're in when they're in their natural habitat and happy and reproducing and doing their thing, they're really not moving a lot. They're just kind of like they'll just meander. They're more like somewhere between an orbited mite and like a hypoaspis miles, where you see like a predatory species cruising, and then like these slow decomposers just kind of cruising along. It's somewhere between the two. So to answer the question in a long fashion, it's really just that they're getting like a boost of CO2, like or a boost of oxygen or something. Like if you blow on them, they bounce. If you open the container, it's a flow of oxygen. They start jumping all over the place like crazy. So I think it's really just the disturbance. So they're probably going to be more mad than happy.
And I think that happens too when you water them. Sometimes if you're over water them for a while and you don't have proper drainage too, I've seen that too, where it does seem like they're mad, where they're just almost like, yeah, this shit is too wet. We love it wet. So um, a lot comes down to proper like your watering techniques as well, and I'm sure we could talk about that at another time. But that's a reason why having the diversity of life. That way, when you as the human being kind of mess it up, life fixes it for you. All right, Green Table Gardens for the win. I guess he's going for the big win from you, Kevin. How do I get as much energy as Kevin? I mean, I have the name already, but it's not working. I kind of want to know that myself, man. The older I'm getting, it's like less and less energy. So how do you keep that going with more kids than everybody?
Dude, I don't know. And ADHD, my wife said, Brian. So you should have some of that energy. Yeah, I have a brain that just goes fire hot fast, and then for a few hours I'm asleep, and then boom, right back up and get after it. It's just how I am, guys. But you know what? I think here's one of those secrets. I always remember being a kid hearing old people say certain phrases and lines. Just do what you love. If you find what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Things like that. And you're like, as a kid, you're like, yeah, okay, that's just like some kind of old man
You're
encouragement or
like,
something like
please
that.
stop, please
Because
stop.
nobody really does that. But the facts are the old man was right. If you really start to find things you like to do and get involved in them, you become a happier person. But you have to actively go out there and do that stuff. And remember, guys, I came from years of anxiety and depression. I had no idea what was wrong with me. I figured I was just going to die at an early age. I'd kind of resigned to that mentality also. And after I got out of all that mess, and it wasn't easy, but I got out of it. I've been to that yucky place, y'all. I've been to the place where you wake up in the morning and it's going to just not be good. You dread it. The feeling is there. You don't even know what to call it. It's anxiety though, guys. It's a little anxiety, it's a little depression, and it can take over your life. It can take over your mind real fast. And I got really mentally unhealthy. I finally got very mentally healthy. And now that I'm able to think properly and to actually protect, not only think properly, but protect my brain from going back there, I do what I like. I do the things I like, and I don't waste my time on the things I don't like. That's it. I mean, that is really what that old man was saying to me. If you find out something you love and you do it forever, you never work a day in your life. We've all heard that phrase, but the point's it, man. Find what you like to do, and you'll have all the energy for it. Like I said, walking out in my garden, I'll be out there all day long. It'll never get old. I'll never get tired of it. I'll get hot from the sun, but it won't be from me getting tired of being in the garden. I could be there the entire day. So find what you love. Ain't that right, boys?
Amen. I would say if you're from a scientific point of view, I would imagine Kevin's getting more vitamin D than a lot of us that are indoors so often. And so that could be the specific thing for you, Green Table Gardens, is being outdoors more often. If you don't have enough time, the more sun you can get on your body, the better. So those are the kind of things that I think I'm learning later in life, and we've kind of shared over the years, that you got to go outside. You got to remember to kind of be a human being indoors and outdoors. And the weeks and the months go by pretty quick, man. And at least for a lot of us, then you don't have, in December, it's pretty hard to get sunshine in Colorado. And I would imagine where you are as well, Mark. I don't know. In Oklahoma, it seems like it's pretty warm most of the year.
You get some sun, no doubt about it.
So that's kind of what I'm getting at, man. You guys got to kind of know that cycle, and I think there's something to the energy comes from the sun, in my opinion. Getting good sleep, getting melatonin.
Appreciate you, Jims. You the man.
All right, test nugs. This is the last one, and then if you guys want to pick the winner, systemic is bro science. Just Google it. Don't trash your genetics. What are your thoughts on that? Because I've loved this kind of. We could maybe even have a show on this. Where
I don't even think I know what this means. What does systemic mean in this context?
I think
meaning that it never goes away. Even if it's not rearing its ugly head, it's still within the genetic profile.
I guess we need more context. But I don't know. I mean, like I guess I believe in feeding the plants the right things. And once I've started kind of entrusting things like ferments, like composting, and letting nature do the heavy lifting, microbes do all the work, I haven't had to really worry about, like, I can talk on systemic acquired resistance and like giving the plant salicylic acid and chitinase and all these other things that will give it all the things that it needs to have an immune system or a systemic resistance. But I don't need to worry so much about it. But I will say that they wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't actually a real thing. So, and it wouldn't be in literature, scientifically backed, if it wasn't actually a real thing. So I don't know. It's a good question or thought. But Kev, all right, let's sign this bad boy off. We've had an awesome episode, man. What's going on over there, brother?
Okay, I'm going to pick the question first real quick. Stone Mason, you brought us on to Leighton Morrison. You win the question for tonight. I'm going to send you some genetics. You need to DM me your address, please, on Instagram. Okie dokie. Okay, so here's what I got going on, folks. Oh, and we didn't get to the other 3 books. Guys, I have a jewel of a book that I've never even mentioned before. I've kept it to myself. I've ingested all the information. It's all about no-tills, and it's a fantastic book, and I want to tell you guys about it on one of these podcasts. We'll do it again. But on October 19th, guys, that's the big thing coming up. October 19th, the Autumn Immersive class. We have a few more tickets. We're almost sold out. October 19th, we're going to Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Me and Growcast are putting on an outdoors input making class, foraging, wildcrafting. We're going to be out in the woods. I'm going to show you what to look for, where to look, and then to not only do that, but then to bring it back and how to process it down in a useful way, and then teach you exactly how to use it. You're going to go home with a load of inputs and a load of gifts and goodies. I've been working on the goodie bag all day today. It's going to be fantastic. Go to growcastpodcast.com, growcastpodcast.com/classes, and you'll see my class up there, the OK Calyx Autumn Immersive. Now, we're getting close to the end of flower for me here in Oklahoma. I have a brand new line of feminized genetics that me, Kid Mac, Fat Beard, Pothead have all been testing and growing along with other people all over the country. But we tested them quickly. We got them going. I'm in about week 3 or 4 of flower. These girls are terpy and frosty, as I was saying. I've got my Cherry on a Grande across the Peach Pistols. She's kind of the prized possession right now out there. She has the best smell. The Squealer Killers that I did a collab with Ganja Farmer Genetics, they are stinky and gassy. The Peach Pistols I used, it was a 5% washer. Got that from Kid Mac. All the Peach Pistols was the collab me and Kid Mac did last winter. Go to okcalyxshop.com. You'll find a lot of stuff. Soon I'll have that whole fem line up, guys, and I'm going to give you a great deal for the whole line. There's about 13 different strains in there. They're all my stuff. What about you there, Bryan?
Yeah, just behind the scenes getting ready for the big show. It's the AARPE Expo show. They are starting to become, I would say, kind of the silent creeper leader in some of these bigger national shows. They're the Sloan family, so if you're familiar in the reptile world, you probably know who that is. But they're putting on events now, and so there's a lot of those that we're getting ready for. And we appreciate when people go above and beyond to not only promote the show, but have it so organized that, like, you know, I'm sure Mark can attest to this. Kevin, you're starting to do more vending shows and stuff. When it's disorganized, it just feels like, why did I give these people my money? And so I just think there's something too when you feel confident, like, all right, if I give you XYZ money, I expect to get, double or triple that back. And sometimes some of these vendors are able to consistently provide that for people that choose to vend with them. And I think this event is going to be one of them. So just excited for that. RubberDuckyIsopods.com. That's how you can support my family as well as Terrarium Tribe. Also a co-owner of that business as well. So if you're into terrariums, vivariums, and isopods, I got you covered. Mark?
Yeah, so we got some pretty cool stuff on the burner here. Coming up on September 6th, we're going to have Organic Alexa, who's a local Michigan girl, but she's passionate about soil microscopy. And then so that's gonna be cool because we're gonna have Kevin's soils, his IMOs, his compost and stuff like that. And then I think hopefully she can bring some native Michigan stuff that she's got. And she can throw those things under the scope and kind of walk us through that live, where she can have that screen up on this. So if you guys put that on the calendar, definitely tune in to that one live. It's going to be amazing. If you have questions, we're always going to be answering those. And then September 13th, we have Andrew again from Benamite. We had him a couple weeks ago. He's going to be throwing his predatory mites and spider mites, eggs, and other forms of spider mites under scope. He sent me some videos of what he's got, and his quality of scope is amazing. So that's going to be incredible to watch. So put that on the calendar. And then September 20th-ish, maybe the week after, Chris Trump's going to be on. So I told Chris that we're going to have a focus on probably mostly Q&A. So I hope people will tune into that one and drop those questions in, because that's really why we're here to talk about ourselves or about our own stuff. Like, we want to connect with you guys. So we'll get a quick intro from him and then drop right into some Q&A. So definitely stay tuned for more info on that. And then personally here, I have a professional macro photographer coming to my house tomorrow. For him and I are going to be working together pretty much all day to take pictures of
That's cool.
these springtails. Yeah, so
Real cool.
I'm really excited. That's going to revolutionize our brand and our website and what we have to offer. So really excited about that, man. Like, holy crap. Like, I don't even. It's that I've been looking for a macro photographer for a long time, so this is really exciting for me. And
Very cool. Good job.
other than that, you can catch us at mibeneficials.com. Appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. All the questions were great, and I hope we can. Next week, I'm going to throw in so we can have another giveaway for more questions, best questions, and love everybody. Until next week, stay on those plants, keep them thinned out, and always stay organic.